So we know that a variety of psychiatric and neurologic diseases are associated with networks in the brain. And we have the ability to non-invasively actually modulate those brain regions. And we can do that through a technique called electromagnetic induction.
Can you explain what deep transcranial magnetic stimulation is and how it differs from other brain stimulation therapies?
Sure. So a lot of us are familiar with, for a variety of mental illnesses, for taking pharmacotherapy, right? So we go to a doctor's office, they write a prescription, and we take a pill when we go home. Or we get cognitive behavioral therapy or some type of counseling. But sort of a third pillar of how we treat mental health disorders these days includes brain stimulation. So we know that a variety of psychiatric and neurologic diseases are associated with networks in the brain. And we have the ability to non-invasively actually modulate those brain regions. And we can do that through a technique called electromagnetic induction. The way I like to describe this these days is a lot of you watching probably have a wireless charger for your phone at home, where you sort of take your phone that has not a lot of energy in it, and then you place it on this sort of disc, and then magically this disc sort of restores energy to your phone, right? So it does that through this technique called electromagnetic induction. And that's what we can do actually in a bigger way. So effectively, we take sort of a thing called a TMS coil, which can be wound in complicated ways. And we place it over your head, over the brain networks that aren't working particularly well in your particular disease. So that may be the case for depression, is the most common thing that TMS is used for. It's also FDA cleared for obsessive compulsive disorder, as well as smoking cessation right now. And in Europe, it's being used for a lot of other things, including a lot of other addiction disorders. So in this way, we take a TMS coil, we place it over the network that's affected, and then we can kind of restore energy to that particular network. So traditional TMS has been around for, I guess technically since 1984, which is either a long time or a little time, depending on how old you are. And our initial sort of first generation technology could only hit one brain region at a time. But as technology got better and better, and functional MRI, so imaging of the brain, got better and better through the 90s and 2000s, we started to learn that diseases like depression, OCD, and addiction are not just one area of the brain, but they're networks of brain regions. And so correspondingly, our TMS coil design got better and better. Over here, and you can see I have like a variety of coils on my desk. So this one back here, this is sort of the standard coil now, which has become much more complicated. And it has the ability, if you place it on your head, to stimulate a combination of brain regions. So one is here on the left dorsolateral prefrontal and the right dorsolateral prefrontal, and a variety of brain regions. So this is called a deep TMS coil.
To get a free copy of the 12-step guide that I created for you, click on the link in the description below.
And these are sort of the new kind of current generation coils, which can penetrate deeper and wider in order to target the networks involved in depression, addiction, and OCD.
So what happens when you put the coil on your brain? Like what's happening?
Yeah. So what happens is sort of the sciencey answer is that you, basically the neurons in your brain. So your neurons in your brain, if you imagine your brain is like a sheet, and then that sheet is rolled up in little folds. So you've probably seen like what a brain looks like. So you have this sheet of neurons, and they're all aligned in a certain way. And what happens, if you imagine that they're little wires, TMS, so it's taking a magnetic field, and it's generating a little magnetic field that's going on and off and on and off. And that on and off is actually causing these neurons that are in this plane to fire. So what this looks like, for example, is if you go into your doctor's office, your office too, and you have a TMS coil placed on your head, there'll be a pulse. And what will happen is, so electricity comes from the wall, right? And if this is my very basic TMS coil, electricity comes from a wall into a wire that would be attached to this figure of 8 coil, would be a very basic coil. And then it would come in and it would fire a pulse of electricity through the coil. And we know that when electricity is put through a coil, it generates a magnetic field. And when a magnetic field is turned on and off, it generates electricity. The neurons in your brain are sensitive to electricity. And so they see this change in the magnetic field, these little magnets going boop, 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 and then they will fire. And so what happens is if you place this over, so your whole body is mapped out on your brain. This area of your brain controls this hand. This area of your brain controls this arm. This area of your brain controls this leg, if you could see my leg. So what happens is if you place this coil over the hand area and you apply a pulse of electricity, which makes a little magnetic field, and then excites the neurons in the hand area, my hand will go boop, and will contract. And it's the more electricity that goes in this coil, the stronger the magnet is, and the stronger the contraction of my hand. So that's how we find the patient-specific dose of TMS, is to figure out how much electricity you need in order to create a magnet that will make your hand move.
So if you're making your hand move, does that mean, so you have a certain part of your brain that is causing the depression?
Yes. Okay.
And what you're trying, and maybe the neurons in that part of the brain are not as active. Is that accurate?
That's
okay.
Right.
And like I'm making this probably much simpler than it actually is.
No, that's great.
I'm trying to explain it and understand it.
Yeah.
So when you're sending these electric pulses to the area of your brain that's causing depression, it basically wakes that area up.
Yes.
And
that's right.
And that's essentially how we reprogram our brain. Because right now, a person that has depression, they're programmed to be depressed.
That's right.
And
that's right.
And the purpose of the TMS is to reprogram them to not be depressed.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes. Very eloquent and concise. You can think of your brain, the networks involved in the different diseases, a little bit like muscles. And so what's happening with somebody who's depressed is that there's networks in their brain, the left and the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, these areas, are not consuming enough glucose. They're not as active. They're kind of sleepy, as you say. And so what we're doing is we're restoring energy, but there's this term called neuroplasticity, which actually shows that just like if you go to the gym, I hate lifting weights in the gym, but I probably should to get my arms stronger. And if I were to go to the gym 3 weeks in a row every day, which might be hard for me to do, I would probably get stronger, and then I wouldn't actually need to go to the gym for many, many more months, and those muscles would stay strong. That's kind of what we're doing with TMS.
If you got value from this video, if you heard what you needed to hear, be sure to like it. Comment if you've got a question or you have something to say. Subscribe to the channel. Camelback Recovery provides treatment services for people struggling with mental health, mental illness, addiction, alcoholism, whatever it may be. So if you or a loved one is struggling and you need some guidance and you need some direction, reach out to us. Our contact information is down below, or you can go to our website, camelbackrecovery.com, whether it be detox, inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, sober living, recovery coaching, sober companion services, whatever it may be. Like I said, we can either help you or make sure that you get sent in the right direction. We help people all over the country, all over the world for that matter. I'll see you on the next video.